Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Prime Minister has reached the venue.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, we now seek kind permission from the Honorable Prime Minister to start the program. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. It is indeed a great pleasure to heartily welcome you all to the inauguration ceremony of NAP Expo 2024, organized by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, and Least Developed Countries Expert Group, LEG, and hosted by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, this program is being telecast live through Bangladesh Television, Bangladesh Betar, and social media.
This program is also being presented in sign language. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are indeed honored and privileged. Honorable Prime Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina MP, has kindly graced the occasion as chief guest.
This ceremony is being chaired by the Honorable Minister, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh, Mr. Sabir Hussain Chowdhury MP. Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Secretary, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, attends the program as the special guest.
Other dignitaries present on the dais are Dr. Farhina Ahmed, Respected Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Bangladesh, Ms. Gwen Lewis, UN Resident Coordinator, Bangladesh, and Mr. Adao Soares Barbosa, Respected Vice Chair, LDC Expert Group.
Ladies and gentlemen, the NAP Expo is an annual outreach event organized by the Least Developed Countries Expert Group under the UNFCCC in collaboration with various bodies and organizations to promote exchange of experiences and foster partnerships between a wide range of actors and stakeholders on how to advance national adaptation plans.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 9th Global NAP Expo since 2013. It brings together a diverse range of actors from parties and non-party stakeholders, and the overall objective of NAP Expo is to raise adaptation ambition by advancing formulation and implementation of NAPs. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's NAP Expo is Driving Transformational Adaptation Through National Adaptation Plans.
Distinguished guests, at the very beginning we solemnly remember and extend our deepest homage to the Supreme Leader of Independence, the Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite you all to watch a video clip regarding an earnest plea of a child to be born tomorrow for a green and climate-resilient Earth.
From my cozy place, I hear the world's song. It's loud and wild. Where do I belong? I feel safe here, but little scared too. What's outside like? Am I prepared? Am I ready to go? I hear things are changing. Things aren't right. Is everything okay? Will I see the light? Will there be air to breathe? Water to sip? Or will it all vanish in a dangerous blip? I want to explore, see the world wide. But will it be friendly? Or will I need to hide? Mother, can you keep me safe and warm? Or is it better being here, wrapped within you? Better not born. Can't you let my dreams bloom green by the river's flow? In a planet full of beauty for all of us to grow. Of water lilies whisper, a promise untold, of a future blooming, bright and gold.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now I'd request Mr. Adao Suarez Barbosa, Vice Chair of LDC Expert Group, to kindly deliver his speech.
Your Excellency, Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Your Excellency Simon Still, the Executive Secretariat for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Honorable Saber Hossain Khoudy, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ms. Goni Levis, the UN Resident Coordinator for Bangladesh, Dr. Fahina Ahmed, Secretary of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be part of this high-level opening with such esteemed speakers. Your Excellencies, at the outset, please allow me to express our deep appreciation from the least developed countries expert group to the government of Bangladesh for graciously hosting this NAP Expo 2024 with excellent arrangements and full of hospitality. The COP28 UN Climate Change Conference held in Dubai last year decided to call on all countries to have in place their national adaptation plan by 2025 and to have progress in implementing them by 2030. The LEG has been proactively working with all the countries and interested partners to ensure each country has a NAP. The NAP is an umbrella program for adaptation activities in a country with a long-term approach to supporting adaptation assessment and planning and subsequent implementation. Without this plan, ambitious and transformative implementation is simply not possible. We have been assisting the least developed countries around the world in partnership with relevant organizations to assist the LDCs in developing adaptation project proposal pipelines and thereby access or attract available funding under the UNFCCC financial mechanism and other sources. This is crucial to enable implementation of adaptation actions that would result in the outcomes of strengthened adaptive capacity, reduced vulnerability, and strengthened resilience around the world. The LEG works with all interested bodies and organizations to bring our efforts together to accelerate the formulation and implementation of NAPs. We are pleased in that regard and express special thanks to all organizations, internationally and locally here, especially in Bangladesh, that are leading technical assistance or technical sessions in this very important event here in Dhaka. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 9th global event we are running since 2013, and we are proud of this growing legacy of the NAPS Expo in scaling up support around the NAPS. While there is a growing collection of innovative adaptation solutions and initiatives for implementing adaptation, there is an inevitable need for transformation which has been identified as a key feature of adaptation under the global stocktake outcomes. As part of its activities of its work program for 2024-2025, the LEG will identify ways to assist the LDCs in promoting transformative adaptation in their NAPs, National Adaptation Plans. We have very active networks, partners, and strong collaborations that have emerged from the NAP Expos. And we look forward to continue strengthening the expansion of these very important NAPs ahead. We would build on our database of good practice, both in implementing adaptation and in designing project proposals for accessing funds from the multilateral funds, and will continue to expand our support on providing support to countries in exploring and various avenues of financial support that are available to assist the countries to formulate and implement their national adaptation plans. I'm pleased at how much we are adding on to this at this very important NAP Expo here in Bangladesh. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to thank all the country participants for being part of this year's NAP Expo, and all the organizations that have supported us in organizing this very important event. I would like to once again thank the government of Bangladesh. Thank you for your attention.
Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I have the pleasure to call upon Ms. Gwen Lewis, UN Resident Coordinator Bangladesh, to please deliver her speech.
Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Sabir Hussain, MP and Minister of Forestry, Environment and Climate Change, Ms. Farhina Ahmad, Secretary, Ministry of Forestry, Environment and Climate Change, Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, and the Honourable Vice Chair of the Least Developed Countries Expert Groups. It's really an honour to be with you all here today to address the opening of the NAP Expo 2024 on behalf of the United Nations in Bangladesh. It is very timely and appropriate that Bangladesh is hosting the 9th NAP Expo 2024 in Dhaka. As this audience knows very well, Bangladesh remains one of the most disaster-prone and climate-vulnerable countries globally, ranking 7th in the Global Climate Risk Index. In 2023 alone, Bangladesh experienced 3 cyclones, Mocha, Hamoon, and Mitili, that affected 1.5 million people, and devastating floods and landslides in the Chattogram region that affected over 1.3 million people. Climate change is expected to increase the number and the severity of such disasters and is a major threat to Bangladesh's impressive development gains. If global warming persists at the current rate, it could force an estimated 17% of the population of Bangladesh to migrate internally by 2050, an incredible number given that Bangladesh's population of over 160 million people. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the negative effects of climate change on crop production could adversely affect food security and lead to an increase in poverty of 15% by 2030. Already today, Bangladesh loses 1.3% of its annual GDP growth due to storms, floods, and natural disaster. The Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics predicts that on average, the current trends will rise to about 2% of GDP by 2050 and 9% by 2100. We've also seen climate's very real impact on people's health. 2023 saw the largest outbreak of dengue fever in Bangladesh's history, with mosquito-borne diseases likely to become more prevalent with extreme weather conditions. And that's also what I'd like to mention and congratulate the Ministry of Environment and Health for also having a NAP on health to address some of these concerns. Knowing the huge risks to progress, Bangladesh has been very proactive in planning for climate change adaptation. A country cannot address climate change alone, however, and without concerted action now, the path to sustainable development is uncertain. This is why the Secretary-General of the United Nations has declared tackling climate change as one of the 6 key accelerators for the fulfillment of the 2030 Agenda, and why the UN in Bangladesh has as its highest priority to support the government to foster a sustainable, healthy and resilient environment. As a party to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, Bangladesh must be congratulated as one of the 53 countries that has developed a national adaptation plan that envisions building a climate-resilient nation through effective adaptation, and strategies that foster a robust society and ecosystems and stimulate sustainable economic growth. This NAP Expo is an opportunity to discuss together the transition from National Adaptation Plan to action, including the all-important goal of raising financing. It's also why the Prime Minister and the Minister of Environment's leadership is so important, as it will ensure coordination of critical resources behind the government's plans and the government's already significant investments in adaptation. According to the National SDG Costing Exercise conducted in 2022 and supported by the UN, the estimated synchronized cost for achieving SDG 13 in Bangladesh is 11.5 billion per year on average. On climate change adaptation specifically, I know that the government of Bangladesh estimates that approximately 230 billion will be required by 2050, the equivalent of 9 billion per year on average. In addition to coordinated planning for climate adaptation, Bangladesh is now making its mark as a leader in climate financing, recognizing the need to mobilize international and domestic climate financing, including from the private sector, to supplement the considerable investments from the government, totaling 3.4 billion alone in this year's national budget. The UN in Bangladesh has also continued to play our part to ensure the most vulnerable and marginalized in both rural and urban settings can benefit from a cleaner and more resilient environment and adaptive development. Under the International Financing Framework, the financing roadmap for SDG 13 has been clearly articulated to support the government's priorities under key national plans, including the National Adaptation Plan. To deliver on climate work, the UN aims to implement 216 million in projects over 5 years under our program of cooperation in the country. And in 2023, the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development delivered more than $500 million in investment in sustainable and resilient agriculture and climate adaptation. In addition to the investment in climate adaptation, we are working to integrate a climate lens on UN programs for health, food security, gender, youth, governments and mitigation. For example, the UN is also accompanying Bangladesh's global leadership on the UN Food Systems Summit, leading the Coalition on Climate Resilience. The UN's normative policy interventions include work to support climate change adaptation for gender security and women's empowerment, and leaving no one behind. The UN is also supporting the local government initiatives on climate change. Since the recent UNDP local government program started in 2016, 1.97 million of the most climate vulnerable people, including 56% of women from 9 districts, have already benefited from grants and capacity building support. At COP28, the program received the Local Adaptation Champion Award in the category of Innovation in Developing Climate Finance. In addition to supporting adaptation and mitigation, we continue to work closely with the government to bolster nationwide disaster preparedness and risk management. It is a major milestone in 2023 that the Ministry of Disaster Management and Bangladesh adopted the Secretary-General's Initiative for Early Warning for All and formulated a national roadmap. Bangladesh is the world's first country to create a multi-hazard anticipatory action framework covering both floods and cyclones. Before Cyclone Mocha and flash floods, for example, last year, 45,000 people received timely cash payments. Multi-stakeholder partnerships, particularly with the private sector and international financial institutions, are also key to driving success on climate adaptation and to support the government efforts to achieve pipelines of bankable projects. The UN has supported many initiatives, including with the private sector. The Bangladesh Employers Forum, the Bangladesh Chamber of Commerce and Industries are working with us to also lead private sector in supporting climate change initiatives. These initiatives and many more are pledges to fully support and continue the efforts to enhance Bangladesh's adaptation to climate change and to stay the course of its development journey. Excellencies, with the Summit of the Future on the horizon in September, this is an important occasion to bring world-leading experts on climate and environment together. I know Bangladesh will have a strong voice at these discussions, but we all still need to work together to make national adaptation a reality for people across the country. On behalf of the UN in Bangladesh, I congratulate the government for this event and for convening us around a common issue and cause here in Dhaka for the National Adaptation Programme Expo. We look forward to continuing to support the government in its efforts to implement the NAP here in Bangladesh, to mitigate, to adapt to climate change, and to raise the financing for a steady course towards the Agenda 2030. Thank you all very much.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, now I would request Dr. Farhina Ahmed, Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh, to kindly deliver her speech.
Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina MP, Honorable Prime Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, His Excellency Mr. Saber Hossain Chaudhry MP, Honorable Minister, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Honorable Minister, State Ministers of different ministries, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Honorable Minister from different countries, Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Ms. Gwen Louise, UN Resident Coordinator, Bangladesh, and other distinguished delegates, journalists, print and media, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to you all. On behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, I welcome you all to this 9th National Adaptation Plan Expo 2024 and its inaugural ceremony. Excellencies, at the very outset, I am expressing my profound respect and gratitude to the greatest Bengali of all ages, Father of the Nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who gave us the identity and independence of our nation, and also his love for nature and people was the center of his political philosophy. By following his philosophy, Bangladesh has made significant socio-economic development under the prudent and visionary leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Her firm commitment and leadership drives us to navigate the challenges posed by climate change. It is an absolute honor to mention that our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina received the Champions of the Earth Award of the United Nations Environmental Programme in recognition of her contributions towards environmental sustainability and in addressing the challenges of climate change. Excellencies, I would like to thank the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat for offering Bangladesh to be the host of this important event. And I also thank again UNFCCC colleagues. While organizing this event, we have got tremendous support and coordination facilitate to make this event successful. My deep appreciation for our esteemed guests, including national leaders, policymakers, representatives of international organizations and stakeholders, for your kind presence and highlighting the importance of collaboration in advancing our adaptation efforts. Excellencies and distinguished guests, the NAP Expo 2024 provides us with a unique opportunity to exchange knowledge, best practices, and experience in formulating NAP, identifying strategies, and its implementation. In this regard, I would like to recall the commitment of UNFCCC, Article 4.4 of UNFCCC instrument, where developed countries have the obligation to assist developing country parties when they will be particularly vulnerable to the adverse effect of climate change in meeting cost of adaptation in those adverse effects. And also, I would like to recall Article 47 of UNFCCC that says the extent to which developing country parties will effectively implement their commitments under the convention will depend on the effective implementation by the developed country parties of their commitments under the convention related to the financial resources and transfer of technology. And also, Article 7.6 of Paris Agreement says parties recognize the importance of support and international cooperation on adaptation efforts and the importance of taking into account the needs of developing country parties, especially those who are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effect of climate change. So, before this NAP Expo, we would like to urge that to make this Expo meaningful, all our delegates will reaffirm the commitments, show their and demonstrate their commitments to uphold the commitments of UNFCCC instrument as well as Paris Agreement. You all know that Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, while our involvement to greenhouse gas emission is very low. We have made remarkable strides to address climate issues over the last decade by developing several national level strategies, and we formulated and adopted National Adaptation Plan 2023 to 2050 by following a very rigorous participatory method and following the LDC Experts Group guidance. Now we are in the process of implementation. This SNAP Expo will definitely create opportunity to foster the partnership among nations and stakeholders. If we look at the theme of the Expo is driving transformational adaptation through NAPs, this is a very strong message and a strong expression of the developing countries, LDCs, that we know that incremental and ad hoc efforts are not useful to bring a transformational change. So this SNAP will emphasize and I believe will drive to bring a transformational change in the implementation of National Adaptation Plan. Excellencies, lastly again, I would like to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to Her Excellency, Honorable Prime Minister, for her kind presence at the event and giving us important direction for our further advancement. My sincere gratitude goes to all distinguished guests and participants for your commitment to advancing our collective goals. Let us take this opportunity to foster our partnership, share knowledge, and strengthen activities towards a more resilient and sustainable future for all. I thank you all. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, ever live Bangladesh.
Excellencies, Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, gracing the occasion as special guest, Executive Secretary, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, may I have the pleasure to call upon Mr. Simon Steele to please say a few words.
Good morning, all. Your Excellency, Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Honorable Sabir Hussain Chowdhury, Minister of the Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, and recognizing other members of the head table, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I must begin by extending my heartfelt thanks to Her Excellency Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and to the government of Bangladesh for their commitment and determination to host this NAP Expo here in Dhaka this week. Bangladesh has always been at the frontier of the fight against climate change, not only by its actions at the national level, but also through proactive engagement in the entire intergovernmental space. We've always had prominent leadership and expertise from Bangladesh across all our disciplines. His Excellency Sabir Hussain Chowdhury played a key role in the loss and damage funding arrangements throughout 2023 and the historic agreements that were set there. The late Salmin ul Haq, remembered fondly by many of us. There are many more Bangladeshis who have contributed or are still contributing to widening our knowledge and finding our path forward. It is therefore fitting that we convene here in Dhaka to focus on one of the core pillars of climate action, adaptation. And we need the rest of the world to follow in Bangladesh's example, moving on from treating adaptation as a theoretical concept to embedding it in its way of life. Climate change impacts transcend boundaries, with vast repercussions rippling through the global economy and socio-cultural systems. Those most vulnerable, often least able to easily adapt, are those that pay the biggest price when impacts strike. The reality is, those impacts we have faced will increase in scale and frequency over time, even if we were to limit all emissions from tomorrow. Prioritizing adaptation is the only way to develop resilience for every nation against those impacts. Despite this reality, adaptation action remains slow. We're playing catch-up while climate impacts are picking up speed and force. Still today, only 54 developing countries have produced a national adaptation plan. 14 years after establishment, NAPs and the system of underlying support to develop them. And at COP28, it set before us an ambitious target for all developing countries to have submitted their NAPs by 2025. As of March 2024, out of a total of 105 adaptation and cross-cutting projects approved by the GCF board, only 65 projects are linked to the NAP. 14 years after the NAP process was launched, 65 projects from the 54 countries seem to reflect insufficient progress. The national adaptation plans form the bedrock for building resilience. Resilience building is critically urgent to protect our societies and our economies. As an example, take the supply chains that all economies depend on. We have just seen what supply chain disruptions flowing on from COVID-19 did to inflation and to businesses. You can be sure that these disruptions and inflationary impacts will get dramatically worse without bolder climate action. Here today, I'm announcing that UNFCCC, working with partners, will initiate a platform to advance a set of concrete actions that will help redefine the scale and pace of progress of the NAP process. Firstly, in terms of NAP formulation, we will mobilize UNFCCC's Secretariat resources, especially our regional collaboration centers, to interface directly with countries to accelerate the formulation of NAPs for the 100 developing countries that have not yet completed their NAP. And we'll work with our partners on removing the barriers slowing down the process. In doing so, we will support the alignment of the NAPs with the agreed targets under the global goal on adaptation. Secondly, in terms of NAP implementation, and in order to fully capitalize on untapped sources of finance, we will complete a full scoping of new and innovative sources of finance that will respond to the need to scale up support for NAP implementation beyond existing channels and modalities. And thirdly, we'll also catalyze the active matching of national or multi-country needs and priorities with the corresponding sources of support, including new and innovative sources that will be identified throughout this scoping exercise. A core partner in this effort will be the LDC expert group, which provides technical guidance and advice on the NAP process. We'll ensure that our support for the leg will be intensified to help achieve the objectives of accelerating and scaling up the NAP process. I will be calling upon relevant partners to join forces with us in making this vision a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, this year at COP29 in Baku, we need to agree on a new target for climate finance that meets developing country needs. But it's not enough to agree on just a target. What is most important is how we are going to ensure the necessary means are in place to access that finance. I just came back from the spring meetings of the World Bank and the IMF. These issues dominated the discussions about the reform of the international financial system. Progress is required here, and there is impatience with the pace of these reforms. Will all countries have their NAPs by then to effectively access whatever new finance will be in place? And will those NAPs be ambitious enough to attract the full range and variety of available finance? The answers to these questions must be yes, if we are to be able to be fully prepared for the renewed climate finance landscape. Therefore, I challenge us all to think beyond the push for additional expedited and simplified procedures. I would hope to see the kinds of plans that will attract financing from all available sources, current and future, public and private. While doing so, I emphasize that any new or innovative sources should not further disadvantage vulnerable countries by increasing their debt burdens in any way. This will certainly enrich the ongoing discussions on global climate finance. Governments and the NDBs alike must internalize the necessity for transformation, to embed goals, possibilities, and challenges of our era of a rapid change in their decision-making processes. I trust that this 9th Global NAP Expo will be a turning point in the history of national adaptation plans. We'll work together in creating new modalities and understandings that will elevate the impact and the pace at which the formulation and implementation of NAPs will proceed from this moment on. For this to materialize, we will need a system-wide alignment towards that paradigm shift. At the moment, we are reactive. We must respond to climate impacts already upon us. We have an opportunity now to build systems to actually shape the future and preempt climate damage. I wish you all the best for your deliberations over these coming days. And we at the UNFCCC are here to support you. I thank you.
Distinguished guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to request Mr. Sabir Hussain Chaudhry MP, Honorable Minister, Minister of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh, to kindly deliver his speech.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, the Honorable Prime Minister, Government of People's Republic of Bangladesh, distinguished guests who are in the podium, and we have just heard Mr. Simon Steele, Executive Secretary of UNFCCC, speak. I am also delighted that we have so many members of the Cabinet amongst us, something that represents the all-of-government approach that we have. We also have individuals from the academia. I see a number of vice-chancellors of universities are present, of course, senior secretaries, the principal secretary, and other senior officials of the ministry. We have representatives of the youth. We have the gender dimension well covered. And I think this is, of course, one of the strengths of Bangladesh under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, that we actually have an all-of-government approach. This is the first time that Bangladesh is hosting the NAP Expo. And I think in many ways, and I'm not saying it just because I am the Minister for Environment in Bangladesh, what else or what country would be more appropriate or more fitting for us to have this? This is a country where the challenges of adaptation and how we respond to it are a lived reality every day, 24 hours of a day. So whether it be the melting of the glaciers in the Hindu Kush Himalayas or the rising sea levels in the Bay of Bengal to the south of Bangladesh, we are caught in between. Whether it is salinity intrusion, whether it is displacement of millions of people literally, whether it is our food security and our agricultural GDP being impacted, whether it is the annual floods, Bangladesh has it all. So this is really the ground zero for climate change. We are at the front lines of climate change. We are perhaps the richest laboratory in the world to monitor the impacts of climate change. And in the 30 years that we have engaged with the UNFCCC process, since ratifying this treaty, we have been actively involved. We have been an active participant in the UNFCCC process. And now we have the NAP. And just listening to Mr. Simon Steele, and if you look at the theme of this year's NAP, we use the word transformational, which means that business as usual is not an option. We have not done enough of mitigation, we have not done enough of adaptation, and now we are confronted with loss and damage. I'm not sure what comes after loss and damage other than extinction. So we refer to climate change as an existential threat. And trying to respond to this threat, it is not going to be enough for a country like Bangladesh to act by itself. We need global solidarity, we need global cooperation, we need the multi-development banks, the MDBs, to relook at how they imagine climate finance. We talk about $100 billion. Of course, that is a promise that has not been kept. We talk about 50-50 between adaptation and mitigation. That has not been kept. We talk about funding which has to be new and additional. And the fact that we don't have a definition of climate finance yet makes all these figures, I wouldn't say meaningless, but not as substantive as they can be. Because we see that there is overlapping, there is duplication, there is ODA which is repackaged as climate finance. So for a country like Bangladesh, when we talk about climate change, we are really walking the talk. We know what it involves. We know what it means. So the voice of Bangladesh is a very powerful voice for all of the climate vulnerable countries. And our Prime Minister, as the leader of CVF, has really shown us the path. She has been relentless in the absolute imperative of limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. This was a demand that Bangladesh made when we are talking about 2 degrees Celsius in Paris. So we had actually flagged this way before. She has been relentless in advocating for loss and damage because we know we are not doing enough for adaptation. So whether it is slow onset processes, whether it is non-economic losses, loss and damage of course is important. But we don't want everything to be transferred to the loss and damage agenda. If we can do adaptation effectively, it means the burden on loss and damage is going to be reduced. Under our Honorable Prime Minister, we are not just a victim of climate change, which of course we are. We are one of the most impacted. We are also leaders when it comes to innovation and solutions. We were the first country in the world back in 2009, even before the NAP process started, to talk about a climate change trust fund. We formed this from our own resources. So we are not waiting for the world to help us out. We are trying to do as much we can based on the resources that we have. And so many projects have been implemented. The first country in the world where the parliament declared a planetary emergency, not just a climate emergency, a planetary emergency. And we are also innovative when it comes to how to mobilize funding. I'm hoping that the Honorable Prime Minister will announce the launch of a new partnership that we have been talking about, bringing all of the development partners together, bringing all the stakeholders, the youth, the women, the NGOs, the academia, civil society, everyone together, the private sector. How can we unlock the potential of the private sector? And of course, there we know we have a fundamental challenge because adaptation, unlike mitigation, doesn't have a defined ROI. There is no return on investment. We can justify private sector investment when it comes to revenue generating projects. So an important point that we want to raise from this NAP Expo is that funding for adaptation has to be grant or concessional. It cannot be commercial funding because then that is a double whammy. We are being penalized, we are suffering, not for our actions, but for the actions of others. And then we have to fund our response to it through commercial loans. That cannot be right. And I think we speak for all of the developing countries when we say that. So this is a country which is going to showcase its own achievements, and we are going to learn from the experience of others. In terms of the National Adaptation Plan, $230 billion. But what if temperatures rise to more than 1.5 degrees Celsius? That amount, that figure is going to grow even further. And now we know that based on the best pledges that have been made, we are heading towards a 2.6 degree temperature increase. Look at the impacts at 1.1 and what happens when it is 2.6. So the global community must get its act together. We cannot be talking about solving a problem and at the same time creating the problem. When we are trying to solve a problem, we cannot do it by growing it further. So mitigation piece is extremely important. We cannot go on adapting forever. Resilience has its limits, despite all of the wonderful innovations in terms of community-based adaptation, in terms of locally led adaptation, in terms of empowering the women of Bangladesh. So that is also a very important piece. So when we go to Baku, we have to have a definition for climate finance. We have to have funding which is based on needs. The $100 billion, with due respect, is peanuts compared to what is required. Bangladesh itself needs $230 billion. If you look at the countries from Africa, the LDCs, the small island developing states, it's going to be trillions of dollars every year. So where is this fund going to come from? And the AV that we had at the beginning, where we talked about climate justice. So we haven't created the problem, we have contributed the least, and yet we are the most impacted. We are being asked to adapt beyond our means. Gwen Lewis talked about the $3.5 billion that the government of Bangladesh has allocated for climate adaptation. This is money we could have invested in health, in education, in infrastructure, in information technology, in empowering our youth and our women, but we are having to spend it on climate change. We are having to choose between fulfilling the development aspirations of the people of Bangladesh and funding climate change adaptation. No country should have to make that choice. Why is it either or? We want to do it all, and so we need the funding. The message from Washington that we have, I know Simon was trying to be careful in his choice of words, but they really need to step up. And we need to break from this business as usual mode. We don't want to hear words. We don't want to hear rhetorics. We want to see action. We want to see delivery. And that is what our Honorable Prime Minister has been constantly talking about. So we need global solidarity. We need global trust. And that trust is undermined each time a promise that is made is not kept. So how do we build that trust? Well, Bangladesh is going to be a willing partner in that. We will engage with all of our friends at the UNFCCC. Under the leadership of our Prime Minister, we want to do just that. We want to be the country that brings the world together. And in NAP, we are going to start that process. We will hear from our Honorable Prime Minister. Let me conclude by referring to a speech that the founding father of Bangladesh gave at the United Nations in 1974, where he talked about united and collective efforts of the people. Our most important objective, goal, aim, self-reliance. We want to stand on our own feet. And he talked about international cooperation. He talked about sharing of resources to alleviate the sufferings of our people. Let me request that AV to be played now, please.
আমরা বাংলাদেশের মানুষ, আমার মাটি আছে, আমার সোনার বাংলা আছে, আমার পাট আছে, আমার গ্যাস আছে, আমার চা আছে, আমার ফরেস্ট আছে, আমার মাছ আছে, আমার লাইভ স্টোর আছে। যদি ডেভেলপ করতে পারি ইনশাআল্লাহ এই দিন আমাদের থাকবে না।
The time has changed. The vision that the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, dreamed of became reality. Bangla transformed into Shonar Bangla. It is political wisdom and foresight Bangabandhu have enriched the history of Bangla. He stated that our goal is self-reliance. Our chosen path is the united and collective efforts of our people. International cooperation and the sharing of the resources and technology could, no doubt, make our task less onerous and reduce the cost of human suffering. The father of the nation Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman.
So, ladies and gentlemen, just as Bangladesh is being transformed under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, we want to transform the world of climate governance. We want to have a resilient world, not just for the youth of today, but also the child that is going to be born tomorrow. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangabandhu, Chirojibhi Hok Bangladesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, now crests will be handed over. On behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, now crests will be presented to the Executive Secretary, UNFCCC, Mr. Simon Steele. Respected Secretary Dr. Farhina Ahmed will please do the honor. Ladies and gentlemen, crest is being presented to the Executive Secretary, UNFCCC, Mr. Simon Steele.
And now, on behalf of UNFCCC, crest will be presented to Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina MP. Executive Secretary Mr. Simon Steele will please do the honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, crest has been presented to the Honorable Prime Minister, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina MP. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I have the honor to invite the chief guest of the ceremony, Honorable Prime Minister, Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina MP, to please address the distinguished gathering and formally declare inauguration of NAP Expo 2024 and launch of Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership BCDP. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Prime Minister.
Please sit. Thank you. অনেক ধন্যবাদ। বিসমিল্লাহির রহমানির রহিম। আজকের অনুষ্ঠানের সভাপতি, সহকর্মীবৃন্দ, UNFCCC এর এক্সিকিউটিভ সেক্রেটারি, আগত অতিথিবৃন্দ, উপস্থিত সুধীমণ্ডলী, আসসালামু আলাইকুম। বাংলাদেশে প্রথমবারের মতো আয়োজিত ন্যাশনাল অ্যাডাপ্টেশন প্ল্যান NAP এক্সপো 2024 এর উদ্বোধন অনুষ্ঠানে আপনাদের সকলকে আমার আন্তরিক অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি, শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি, স্বাগত জানাচ্ছি। এই আয়োজনের জন্য আমি বন ও পরিবেশ মন্ত্রণালয় এবং সার্বিক ব্যবস্থাপনায় ইউনাইটেড নেশনস ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক কনভেনশন অন ক্লাইমেট চেঞ্জ UNFCCC কে আন্তরিক ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি। সুধীমণ্ডলী, জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের বিরূপ প্রভাব মোকাবেলার বৈশ্বিক উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করা হয় 1992 সালে, কিন্তু আমাদের মহান নেতা জাতির পিতা বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিবুর রহমান এর অনেক আগে 1972 সালে এ বিষয়ে কার্যকর ও সুদূর প্রসারী কর্মপরিকল্পনা গ্রহণ করেন। সামুদ্রিক জলোচ্ছ্বাস ও প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ থেকে রক্ষার জন্য 1972 সালে তিনি উপকূলীয় বনায়নের সূচনা করেছিলেন। একই বছর ঘূর্ণিঝড় প্রস্তুতি কর্মসূচি প্রণয়ন করেন, যা 1973 সালে উদ্বোধন করা হয়। জীবন ও সম্পদ রক্ষায় তিনি উপকূলীয় অঞ্চলে ঘূর্ণিঝড় আশ্রয় কেন্দ্র নির্মাণ শুরু করেন। এসব আশ্রয় কেন্দ্র স্থানীয়দের কাছে মুজিব কিল্লা নামেই পরিচিত। বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিব প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগের বিষয়টি আন্তর্জাতিক ফোরামেও উত্থাপন করেছিলেন। 1974 সালে 25শে সেপ্টেম্বর জাতিসংঘে প্রদত্ত ভাষণে বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিব বলেছিলেন, আমি কোট করছি, দুর্যোগের কবলে পড়ে যে সকল দেশ বারবার ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত হয়, বাংলাদেশ তাদের অন্যতম। তাই প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগ থেকে উদ্ভূত পরিস্থিতি মোকাবেলায় বিশ্ব সমাজকে এগিয়ে আসার উপযোগী একটি নিয়মিত প্রাতিষ্ঠানিক ব্যবস্থা গঠনে বাংলাদেশের বিশেষ স্বার্থ নিহিত রয়েছে। আনকোট। দেশের উদ্ভিদ প্রজাতি সংরক্ষণ ও গবেষণার জন্য বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিব 1975 সালের 1 জুলাই ন্যাশনাল হার্বেরিয়াম প্রতিষ্ঠা করেন। দেশের বন ও পরিবেশ সংরক্ষণ, দুর্যোগ ব্যবস্থাপনা, পানি সম্পদ ব্যবস্থাপনা ও প্রাকৃতিক সম্পদ রক্ষা সহ জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের প্রভাব মোকাবেলা করে ঘুরে দাঁড়ানোর সামর্থ্য অর্জনে তিনি বহুবিধ পদক্ষেপ গ্রহণ করেছিলেন। সুধীমণ্ডলী, আমরা বঙ্গবন্ধু শেখ মুজিবের পদাঙ্ক অনুসরণ করে জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের বিরূপ প্রভাব মোকাবেলায় নিজস্ব সম্পদ দিয়ে বিভিন্ন কর্মসূচি বাস্তবায়ন করছি। অভিযোজন কার্যক্রমে বাস্তবায়নের জন্য 2009 সালে আমরা নিজস্ব অর্থায়নে বাংলাদেশ জলবায়ু পরিবর্তন ট্রাস্ট ফান্ড প্রতিষ্ঠা করেছি। এর আওতায় এ পর্যন্ত প্রায় $500 মিলিয়ন ব্যয় 969টি প্রকল্প গ্রহণ করা হয়েছে। সামুদ্রিক বাঁধ, সাইক্লোন শেল্টার, উপকূলীয় বনায়ন ইত্যাদি কর্মসূচিতে 2023-24 অর্থ বছরে 25টি সংশ্লিষ্ট মন্ত্রণালয়ের মাধ্যমে প্রায় 37,000 কোটি টাকা আমরা ব্যয় করেছি। বাংলাদেশে সংগঠিত 1970 সালে মহাপ্রলয়ঙ্কারী ঘূর্ণিঝড় ও জলোচ্ছ্বাসে প্রায় 5 লাখ মানুষের মৃত্যু হয়েছিল। কিন্তু এরপর আরেকটি ঘূর্ণিঝড় 1991 সালে প্রায় 2 লক্ষের কাছাকাছি মানুষের মৃত্যু হয়। কিন্তু 2023 সালে ঘূর্ণিঝড় মোখায় কোনো প্রাণহানি ঘটে নাই। এটি জলবায়ু পরিবর্তন অভিযোজন এবং দুর্যোগ ঝুঁকি হ্রাসে বাংলাদেশের সক্ষমতার বহিঃপ্রকাশ। গত 15 বছরে আমরা পার্বত্য শাল বনাঞ্চলে প্রায় 1,27,548 হেক্টর এলাকায় বৃক্ষরোপণ সহ 89,853 হেক্টর উপকূলীয় বন সৃজন করেছি। স্থানীয় জনগণকে সম্পৃক্ত করে আমরা সামাজিক বনায়ন বিধিমালা 2010 প্রণয়ন করেছি। জলবায়ু উদ্বাস্তু পরিবারসমূহের জন্য কক্সবাজার জেলায় আমরা বিশ্বের বৃহত্তম খুরুশকুল বিশেষ আশ্রয়ণ প্রকল্প নির্মাণ করেছি। এই প্রকল্পের আওতায় 139টি বহুতল ভবন নির্মাণ করে 4,409টি জলবায়ু উদ্বাস্তু পরিবারকে পুনর্বাসনের লক্ষ্যে নির্ধারণ করা হয়েছে। এছাড়া আমরা জলবায়ু উদ্বাস্তু প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগে ভূমিহীন, গৃহহীন, সমাজের পিছিয়ে পড়া অন্যান্য সম্প্রদায়ের মানুষকে জমিসহ ঘর বিনামূল্যে প্রদান করছি এবং তাদের শিক্ষা, স্বাস্থ্য, কর্মসংস্থানের সুযোগ তৈরি করা হয়েছে। এ পর্যন্ত আমরা প্রায় 22 লাখ মানুষকে পুনর্বাসন করতে সক্ষম হয়েছি। ঢাকায় গ্লোবাল সেন্টার অন অ্যাডাপ্টেশনের দক্ষিণ এশিয়া আঞ্চলিক অফিসের মাধ্যমে সর্বোত্তম অনুশীলনগুলি ভাগ করে নেওয়ার উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করা হয়েছে। শুধুবৃন্দ, বৈশ্বিক কার্বন নিঃসরণে আমাদের অবদান 0.48% কম হলেও এর নেতিবাচক প্রভাবে সবচেয়ে বেশি ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত ও ঝুঁকিপূর্ণ দেশসমূহের মধ্যে বাংলাদেশ অন্যতম। জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের এ বিরূপ প্রভাব আমাদের সম্ভাব্য উন্নয়ন এবং অর্থনৈতিক সমৃদ্ধির জন্য হুমকি হিসেবে দেখা দিয়েছে। অব্যাহত বৈশ্বিক উষ্ণায়নের ফলে সমুদ্রতলের উচ্চতা বৃদ্ধি পাচ্ছে, লবণাক্ততা বৃদ্ধি পাচ্ছে। এর ফলে বাংলাদেশের দক্ষিণ পশ্চিমাংশের বিস্তীর্ণ অঞ্চল, যা দেশের মোট আয়তনের 12 থেকে 17%, এই শতাব্দীর শেষ দিকে সমুদ্রগর্ভে নিমজ্জিত হওয়ার ঝুঁকির মধ্যে রয়েছে। আমরা বৈশ্বিক তাপমাত্রা বৃদ্ধি 1.5 ডিগ্রি সেন্টিগ্রেডের মধ্যে সীমিত রাখতে উন্নত বিশ্বের প্রতি আহ্বান জানিয়েছি। গ্রিনহাউস গ্যাস নিঃসরণের হ্রাসে বাংলাদেশ 2015 সালে ইন্টেন্ডেড ন্যাশনালি ডিটারমাইন্ড কন্ট্রিবিউশন INDC প্রণয়ন করে এবং 2021 সালে তা হালনাগাদ করে UNFCCC-তে জমা দেয়। এতে আমরা শর্তহীন 6.73% এবং শর্তযুক্ত 15.12% গ্রিনহাউস গ্যাস নিঃসরণ হ্রাসের লক্ষ্যমাত্রা নির্ধারণ করেছি। শুধু মণ্ডলী, বাংলাদেশের আমরা জীবাশ্ম জ্বালানির ব্যবহার হ্রাস করে নবায়নযোগ্য জ্বালানির ব্যবহার বৃদ্ধি করেছি, যাতে গ্রিনহাউস গ্যাস নিঃসরণ হ্রাস পায়। এ পর্যন্ত প্রায় 60 লাখ সোলার হোম সিস্টেম স্থাপন এবং গ্রামাঞ্চলে 45 লাখেরও বেশি উন্নত চুলা বিতরণ করা হয়েছে। আমরা 2023 সালে মুজিব ক্লাইমেট প্রসপারিটি প্ল্যান MCPP প্রণয়ন করেছি। এতে জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের বিরূপ প্রভাব মোকাবেলা করে বিপদাপন্ন থেকে সহিষ্ণুতা ও সহিষ্ণুতা থেকে সমৃদ্ধি পর্যায়ে পৌঁছানোর লক্ষ্য নির্ধারণ করা হয়েছে। এছাড়া MCPP-তে অভিযোজন ও প্রশমন কার্যক্রমে স্থানীয় জনগণের স্বপ্রণোদিত অংশগ্রহণ, প্রকৃতি ভিত্তিক সমাধান ও সমাজের সকলের অংশগ্রহণের উপরও আমরা বিশেষ গুরুত্ব আরোপ করেছি। সম্মানিত অতিথিবৃন্দ, বাংলাদেশ ইতিমধ্যে জাতীয় অভিযোজন পরিকল্পনা NAP 2022 থেকে 2050 প্রণয়ন করেছে। 2022 সালের অক্টোবরে এটি UNFCCC-তে দাখিল করা হয়েছে। এ পরিকল্পনায় আমরা 11টি জলবায়ু ঝুঁকিযুক্ত এলাকাতে 8টি খাতে 113টি অগ্রাধিকারমূলক কার্যক্রম চিহ্নিত করেছি। আগামী 27 বছর ন্যাপে গৃহীত কর্মপরিকল্পনাসমূহ বাস্তবায়নের জন্য আমাদের প্রায় $230 মিলিয়ন প্রয়োজন। এজন্য সুনির্দিষ্ট তহবিল ও অতিরিক্ত আর্থিক সংস্থানের ব্যবস্থা গ্রহণে আমি ধনী দেশ ও আন্তর্জাতিক সম্প্রদায়ের প্রতি আহ্বান জানাচ্ছি। উন্নত দেশসমূহ ব্যাপক কার্বন নিঃসরণের মাধ্যমে বৈশ্বিক উষ্ণতা বৃদ্ধিতে ভূমিকা রেখে চলেছে। জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের কারণে ক্ষতিগ্রস্ত জনগণকে রক্ষা করা তাদের এটা নৈতিক দায়িত্ব। আমরা ক্লাইমেট ভালনারেবল ফোরাম CBF এর সভাপতি থাকাকালে অভিযোজন ও প্রশমন কার্যক্রমে উন্নত দেশসমূহের প্রতিশ্রুত প্রতি বছর $100 বিলিয়ন প্রদানের বিষয়টি বাস্তবায়ন করার জন্য বারবার আহ্বান জানাচ্ছি। আমার প্রত্যাশা, উন্নত দেশসমূহ তাদের প্রতিশ্রুতি রক্ষা করবে। LDC থেকে উত্তরণের পরেও বাংলাদেশ সহ জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের বিরূপ প্রভাবে হুমকিতে থাকা অন্যান্য দেশগুলো যাতে অব্যাহতভাবে আর্থিক, বৈজ্ঞানিক ও প্রযুক্তিগত সহায়তা পায়, সেজন্য আমি আন্তর্জাতিক সম্প্রদায় ও ধনী দেশগুলোর প্রতি আহ্বান জানাই। COP26 এর সিদ্ধান্ত অনুযায়ী উন্নত দেশগুলোকে 2025 সালের মধ্যে অভিযোজন অর্থায়ন 2019 সালের তুলনায় দ্বিগুণ করার কথা। এটি বাস্তবায়নে আমি ধনী দেশগুলোর প্রতিও আহ্বান জানাই। যে সকল দেশ ইতিমধ্যে ন্যাপ প্রণয়ন করেছে তারা যেন ন্যাপ বাস্তবায়নে UNFCCC সহ অন্যান্য সকল উৎস হতে সহজে এবং দ্রুততার সঙ্গে আর্থিক সহযোগিতা লাভ করতে পারে তা নিশ্চিত করতে হবে। আমরা জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনজনিত সম্ভাব্য ক্ষতি হ্রাসে অভিযোজন ও প্রশমন উভয় ক্ষেত্রে উপযোগী কার্যক্রম গ্রহণ করে যাচ্ছি। এক্ষেত্রে UNFCCC এর লস অ্যান্ড ড্যামেজ তহবিল হতে অর্থ প্রাপ্তির জন্য বাংলাদেশ প্রয়োজনীয় উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করবে। আমরা ভবিষ্যৎ প্রজন্মের জন্য একটি নিরাপদ ও সুন্দর পৃথিবী গড়ে তুলতে চাই। এজন্য প্রয়োজন অভিযোজন সক্ষমতা বৃদ্ধি করা, সহিষ্ণুতা শক্তিশালী করা এবং ঝুঁকি হ্রাসে সমন্বিতভাবে উদ্যোগ গ্রহণ করা। আমি সংক্ষেপে কয়েকটি বিষয় আপনাদের সামনে তুলে ধরছি। প্রথমত, প্রধান কার্বন নির্গমনকারী দেশগুলিকে বিশ্বব্যাপী তাপমাত্রা বৃদ্ধি 1.5 ডিগ্রি সেলসিয়াসের মধ্যে রাখতে তাদের নির্গমন হ্রাস করার জন্য কার্যকর পদক্ষেপ নিতে হবে। দ্বিতীয়ত, উন্নত দেশগুলির দ্বারা জলবায়ু তহবিলে বার্ষিক $100 বিলিয়ন প্রতিশ্রুতি পূরণ করতে হবে। অভিযোজন ও প্রশমনের মধ্যে তা সমানভাবে বন্টন করতে হবে। তৃতীয়ত, উন্নত দেশগুলিকে উন্নয়নশীল দেশগুলিতে প্রযুক্তি হস্তান্তরের পাশাপাশি সবচেয়ে কার্যকর জ্বালানি সমাধানে এগিয়ে আসতে হবে। চতুর্থ, নবায়নযোগ্য জ্বালানিতে রূপান্তরের সময় সংশ্লিষ্ট দেশগুলির উন্নয়ন অগ্রাধিকারগুলি তাদের ক্ষতি অনুসারে বিবেচনা করা উচিত। পঞ্চমত, সমুদ্রপৃষ্ঠের উচ্চতা বৃদ্ধি, লবণাক্ততা বৃদ্ধি, নদী ভাঙন, বন্যা এবং খরার কারণে বাস্তুচ্যুত মানুষদের পুনর্বাসনের দায়িত্ব সকল দেশকে ভাগ করে নিতে হবে। এবং সবশেষে, প্রধান অর্থনীতিসমূহকে পরবর্তী প্রজন্মের জন্য একটি টেকসই ভবিষ্যৎ নিশ্চিত করতে অংশীদারিত্বের ভিত্তিতে বিশ্বব্যাপী সকল অংশীদারদের সঙ্গে কাজ করতে হবে। জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনের অভিঘাত মোকাবেলায় বাংলাদেশ সবসময় আন্তর্জাতিক সম্প্রদায়ের সাথে কাজ করে যাচ্ছে। ইতিমধ্যে প্রধানমন্ত্রীর কার্যালয়ের নেতৃত্বে বাংলাদেশ উন্নয়ন সহযোগীদের সাথে নিয়ে বাংলাদেশ ক্লাইমেট ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনারশিপ BCDP গঠন করা হয়েছে। এতে সকল পক্ষে ঐক্যমত হয়েছে। আমি আশা করি মুজিব ক্লাইমেট প্রসপারিটি প্ল্যান, ন্যাশনাল অ্যাডাপ্টেশন প্ল্যান, ন্যাশনাল ডিটারমাইন্ড কন্ট্রিবিউশন ও বাংলাদেশের রূপান্তর 2041 বাস্তবায়নে BCDP তাৎপর্যপূর্ণ অবদান রাখবেন। আসুন সকলকে সঙ্গে নিয়ে আরও নিবিড়ভাবে এই ধরিত্রী রক্ষায় আমরা কাজ করি। সেই সাথে একটি কথা না বলে পারছি না, এই যুদ্ধে অস্ত্র এবং অর্থ ব্যয় না করে সে টাকাগুলি এই জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনে যদি ব্যয় করা হতো তো বিশ্বটা রক্ষা পেত। সকলকে আবারও ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে ন্যাপ এক্সপো 2024 এবং বাংলাদেশ ক্লাইমেট ডেভেলপমেন্ট পার্টনারশিপ BCDP এর শুভ উদ্বোধন ঘোষণা করছি। I declare the grand inauguration of NAP Expo 2024 and the launch of BCDP. Thank you very much. ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে। খোদা হাফেজ। জয় বাংলা, জয় বঙ্গবন্ধু, বাংলাদেশ চিরজীবী হোক।
Deepest thanks to Honorable Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have a short audio-visual on Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership that Honorable Prime Minister has just launched.
Bangladesh Climate Development Partnership works to enhance climate resilience and sustainability through research, policy, and community engagement. Rising climate change impacts require increased financing and project scope, and insufficient funding is restricting the development of low-carbon growth strategies. BCDP focuses on collaborating for low-emission and resilient pathways, developing policies, mobilizing financing, building a climate project pipeline, and enhancing knowledge and capacity for long-term resilience and sustainability. BCDP's main principles are to unite government, development partners, and stakeholders to agree on a climate agenda, framework, and mobilize resources for financing larger climate projects. BCDP aims to gather global funds for dealing with climate change, making Bangladesh more prepared for action and attracting investment in important projects through long-term partnerships.
Ladies and gentlemen, that marks the end of the inauguration ceremony of NAP Expo 2024. Thank you very much and bye-bye.